They shall come and declare that John Peniel is giving to the world the new order of things. Not that these that have been proclaimed have been refused, but that they are made plain in the minds of men, that they may know the truth, and the truth, the life, the light, will make them free.
This is part of the prophecies of Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, which for years had not been made public, and only a group of members of the Cayce Institute were aware of them. There was concern that with the release of this prophecy, individuals would introduce themselves under the name of John Peniel and promote their own teachings, using the credibility of Cayce's prophecy to present their message as aligned with the new order of things. This secrecy came to an end in 1998 with the publication of this book, written by a person named John Peniel. If you've seen our latest videos, you know that we are reviewing this book about Cayce's narratives on Atlantis, and a group called the Children of the Law of One is one of the central topics of discussion. These are people who believe that human souls have come to Earth from a realm beyond the physical world and are part of a unified consciousness. If you've seen our previous videos on the beliefs of ancient Persians, you must have noticed that many important aspects of the beliefs of this group bear a striking resemblance to the beliefs of ancient Persians. So much so that the Persian Minavi realm could very well be the same original realm of human souls in Cayce's narratives. You've probably guessed that we've extended our explorations beyond Cayce's readings to find more sources about the Children of the Law of One. One of the most important sources on this topic is this very book. It was written by a person who lived in a temple in Tibet for 3 years and began writing the book as a mission given to him by his masters in that temple. John Peniel did not have a normal childhood. When he was 17, he had a fight with his mother over his girlfriend and left home. He wandered for a while and reached such a state of mental distress that he felt life was no longer worth living. One day, while planning to end his life in the house he had been staying in, he was suddenly mesmerized by an image on the television screen. He later wrote that an old man, who looked like the depictions of Zeus in Greek mythology, was speaking to the camera about specific teachings of a mysterious group whose members repeatedly reincarnate. And if they want to admit a new member, that person must undergo years of intensive training, participate in special rituals, and go through specific hierarchical stages to become a member of this group. On that day, John saw this master for the first time, and had never heard of the discussed sect before. But he felt a strong sense of connection with them, so he memorized the address and location of their temple. He soon realized the abnormality of the experience when he went back to find the TV channel where the master's talk had been broadcast. However, no such channel existed, and no one around him had seen a program featuring the Zeus-like master. Eventually, he decided to go to Tibet. He sought the help of a guide to reach the temple located amid the Himalayas. The journey was arduous and seemed never-ending. They traversed heights and through clouds and mist, without finding any signs of human-made structures, until finally, one day, the tall walls of the temple appeared beyond the high mountains. Upon entering the temple, the residents' reaction to John was such that it showed they had been expecting him. The person who first became his guide in the temple took him to various parts of the building, the most important of which was a vast library full of tablets, scrolls, and ancient books that, according to more accepted accounts, had been destroyed and lost over time. However, according to John's account, there were intact copies of these texts in the mysterious library of the temple. He experienced his main shock on the day he met the chief master of this temple, an elderly man with white hair, just like the depictions of Zeus, the very man whose appearance on the television screen had dissuaded John from ending his life and practically led him to join this mysterious temple in the heart of the Himalayas. John stayed in the temple for 3 years, and the teachings began every morning as the sun rose and continued until nightfall. His description of the classes and teachings was that it seemed the masters could read the questions that arose in the minds of the attendees while teaching and answer them before anyone had spoken them out loud. All teachings relate to the unified consciousness, a singular essence that forms the entirety of the universe and connects the consciousness of all beings. According to John, the name of this group, the Children of the Law of One, also derives from this belief in unified consciousness. Their background goes back to the Atlantis period, and further explanation is that, in the final stages of Atlantis's destruction, a group of them went to Egypt, under the leadership of someone who later became known as one of the gods of ancient Egypt. Many of them later journeyed from Egypt to Tibet and established the temple John had visited. Among the temple residents, there have always been a number who volunteered to spread their teachings among the people of the world, and, as special emissaries of this group, travelled to various parts of the world. Those are people whose names are recorded in the pages of history as notable figures in religion, culture, civilization, and even various artistic fields. Yet the achievements of some of them throughout history have been distorted and used in a manner contrary to the original nature of their teachings, by those seeking to perpetuate human bondage in the physical world. This second group was the main obstacle for the Children of the Law of One in awakening human souls and doing everything to make their path more difficult. In the latest development at the time of John's joining their temple, it was predicted that dark forces would soon attack them, and it was necessary to adopt a new approach to preserve their teachings. Their solution was to abandon their previous tradition of secretive and hierarchical training and publish their teachings, making them accessible to everyone. As you might have guessed, John Peniel was chosen by the leader of this group to be the emissary for spreading their teachings. However, his acquaintance with this group and his arrival at the temple proceeded in a way that was entirely under his own choice and initiative. He stayed in the temple for 3 years, attending classes, and simultaneously had one-on-one discussions with his masters to learn more about their teachings. Then one day, the temple was attacked, and he lost his masters. Eventually, he was able to go back to America and continue his mission of spreading the teachings of the Children of the Law of One. He wrote his book and sent it to a publisher under a pseudonym because he knew that as soon as the book was published, the forces that had attacked the temple would come after him. The response he received was that they could publish the book, but, given market conditions and bookstores, it would be better for the author's real name, John Peniel, to be registered as the author. Ultimately, he accepted the risk of revealing his identity, and the book was published under his own name. Without knowing that people at the Cayce Institute were waiting for someone with the same name as his to provide information about a new order. In the book itself, there is also a reference to the contacts with the Cayce Institute, explaining that John was familiar with Cayce's writings, but was unaware that he was mentioned in one of the readings. According to the account from John's masters in this book, the first fragments of the unified consciousness that came to Earth in physical bodies possessed the power of creation due to their connection to the singular creator consciousness. Also, in one of the early stages of creation, they entered Earth as beings that were half human, half animal. This means that depictions like these, seen in many ancient depictions as mythical creatures, actually existed during an unwritten period of Earth's history. What we recognize as demons and negative forces also emerged during this period, through the trials and tests that the first fragments of unified consciousness underwent on Earth while attempting to create life. However, the nature of Lucifer, or the rebellious angel in religious narratives, was somewhat different, and did not have a negative nature before his descent to Earth. After the initial phase of creation, the fragments of the unified consciousness, who descended in the physical world gradually lost their connection to the unified consciousness and thereby lost their powers to create life. They became imprisoned in physical bodies with an animalistic level of understanding and 5 limited senses. In these teachings, the devil in religious narratives represents the inner selfishness of humans, which causes them to be enslaved by the desire for physical pleasures and prevents them from reconnecting with the spiritual world or unified consciousness. Thus, the second phase of descent occurs. This time, other fragments of the unified consciousness voluntarily descend into the physical world to show the first trapped group the way back to the original source and reconnect with the unified consciousness. This act was considered a dangerous sacrifice because there was a risk that during these activities, the voluntary forces might also lose their connection to the spiritual world and become trapped in this world. This second group chose human-like monkeys on Earth as their intermediaries with the physical world. Through their descent into these monkey bodies, the first humans with high spiritual and psychological capacities emerged. This means they were the currently missing link in evolutionary theory, a hybrid version of human-like monkeys combined with fragments of the unified consciousness that came to Earth. These forces had 2 main duties or missions. Firstly, to awaken the first fragments of the unified consciousness that had lost their connection to the original source, so they could reconnect with the global spirit. And secondly, to ensure that they themselves did not lose their connection with the spiritual world. So they formed a group known as the Children of the Law of One, with the goal of preserving and promoting teachings that lead to the unified consciousness. Their teachings were not a religion, but it is stated that all religions copied from these teachings. The main point about religions relates to the activities of their opponents, those who sought comfort in the physical world, and after becoming acquainted with the teachings of the Children of the Law of One, used their rituals to further their own goals in meeting their physical needs. This marked the beginning of religions with a singular God, overseeing and governing all affairs, and, at the same time, associated with rituals and commands that only serve the goals of a few people, while the teachings of the Children of the Law of One focus on infinite goodness and unconditional love. This emphasis on endless goodness and love is because all humans and beings in this world are interconnected, and your kindness to the world passes through these interconnected threads among all beings and ultimately returns to you. One example discussed in the book about the special ability of humans, which both groups mastered, is the power of visualization. According to this, they can use their inner energy to create and bring about change. This description closely resembles the special rituals in Zurvanite beliefs, where Zurvan, the ultimate power, becomes apparent after undergoing a ritual called Yazesh for 1,000 years. The inhabitants of Atlantis could also use visualization to create. They could simply think about something and focus on it to bring it into existence, a power that was later referred to as a miracle. And indeed, this power still governs the world, and anyone with the proper concentration of energy can create.